Hello and welcome to this edition of Statutory Update of Income Tax. I am CA Nita Ravikishore and I am joined by CA PV Raghavendra Kumar. In the next 1 hour, both of us will take you through the significant income tax notifications, circulars, press releases, and case laws of the recent past. To start with, let me share the screen. The Income Tax Department has refunded 62,361 crores to more than 20 lakh taxpayers during the COVID days. In 56 weekdays, more than 20.44 lakh cases have been processed and an amount of 62,361 crores have been refunded. And this refund process was completely electronically done, and the refunds have been directly deposited into the bank accounts of the taxpayers. Over to you, Raghavendra garu.
Yeah, sir, it's a welcome move from the government, sir. The reason for it is now in this COVID times, this refund is definitely of some help, particularly for these individual taxpayers. Generally, there will be a very big drive for tax collections, but it appears as if there is a very big drive for making these refunds. We should really thank the government for making this kind of move. But here, I think certain refunds are still kept pending for the reason that there is some default from our side. Say our bank account is not properly fed in the income tax return, or we might have given some closed bank accounts which are still appearing in the income tax return. So there will be some communication from the department. We need to check our mails and we need to immediately respond to get the refunds at the appropriate and right time.
Yeah, so as a chartered accountant and as a tax consultants, what we have to advise to our clients is they have to be vigilant about their mail IDs. They check their mail IDs regularly, and if any of the communication is received from the income tax department, they should straight away come to their tax consultants and get the things right, so that they will be given the refund and the refund will be processed immediately from the department side. That is the thing.
Correct.
Moving forward, in the recent past, in the social media, there are some reports that the two revenue boards, that is CBDT and CBIC, will be merged. The Government of India, through press release dated 6/7/2020, has clarified that there is no such proposal with the government and the boards will not be merged. What you said?
Right, but one thing is definitely, though there will not be this kind of merger of CBDT and CBIC, but there will be sharing of information. GST people will be sharing the information with the income tax department, and already in the service tax regime itself, people used to get notices that you have disclosed this much of turnover in your service tax returns, but in your income tax return you have shown like this, and we used to give some kind of reconciliation. But as rightly stated, there is no such kind of merger as of now.
Yeah, actually, these rumors were doing the rounds because there was a report from a Tax Administrative Reforms Commission. They have reported to the government and recommended that these two boards be merged. They submitted their report, but the government has not accepted this proposal of that commission.
Correct.
Moving forward, there was Income Tax 6th Amendment Rules 2020, and these amendment rules were notified through notification number 43 of 2020, dated 3rd July 2020. By these amendment rules, the rule number 31A and form number 26Q and form number 27Q have been amended.
Correct. Actually, if you see this Form 26Q, no, it is applicable for the deductees who are resident deductees. If we take Form 27Q, it is for non-resident deductees, or it is a case of a foreign company which is resident but not ordinary resident. Earlier, no, in our TDS returns, we used to give information about cases where taxes are deducted and cases where taxes are not deducted. Because of this amendment through this notification, now the details of cases where lower deduction is made, we are now going to give those details. And apart from that, there are certain codes that are prescribed. Say, for example, if I have made any higher deduction, there is a separate code and we need to mention the reason why you have made a deduction at a higher rate. If it is a lower rate, what is the reason for it? Likewise, no, there is a separate code and flag that is made available in the return itself to capture all these kind of details. And moreover, there is some tax deduction at the source for all the cash withdrawals, and certain limits are prescribed in this respect. So to capture these details, the banks and post offices and all these people are under the obligation to make some tax deduction at the source, and certain limits are prescribed that we will be discussing it afterwards. So to capture all these details, Form 26Q and 27Q is amended to incorporate and to capture all these details.
Right. So moving forward, the next one is with regard to the changes in section 194N. The changes are with effect from 1st July 2020. Right. This 194N is a TDS provision, and this is applicable in respect of and the deductor is the bank, cooperative bank, or a post office. Correct. Now this 194N section will trigger when a person withdraws money from a bank or a cooperative bank or a post office. The deductor is the bank, and the deductee is any other person who is withdrawing the money from these accounts. Correct. Now, why we are dealing with this section in this update? Because there is an amendment in the threshold limits and the rates of TDS with effect from 1st July 2020. Correct. So, Raghavendra Garu, you can go through that.
Right. Actually, very surprisingly, the tax deduction is linked with the filing of returns. We have never seen such a case. Say if somebody has filed his return of income, tax deduction rate is like this. If somebody has not filed the return of income, tax deduction rate is like this. We have never seen such things. But very surprisingly, they have got these kind of amendments. Say if somebody has not filed his returns in the previous 3 years, then the tax deduction will be 2% if it exceeds 20 lakhs, but it won't exceed 1 crore. But if it exceeds 1 crore, then it is made as big as 5%. The condition here is the SSC should not have filed the returns of the previous years. Next, in any other cases, up to 1 crore means if the SSCs are filing returns of income, though they are making cash withdrawals, up to 1 crore, there is no need to make any tax deduction at source. But if it exceeds 1 crore, 2% is the rate that is prescribed for the SSCs where they have filed the returns of income.
Yes, sir. Sorry to disturb you. Go on, sir.
Here, one point to be noted is the tax deduction they will be making it from 1st July 2020. But
at the amended rates, you mean the tax reduction will be made at the amended rates from 1/7/2020, but the threshold limit of 20 lakhs or 1 crore as the case may be will be counted from 1/4/2020. That's what you mean to say.
Correct, sir. That's what I mean.
Yeah, please go on.
But here, no, can somebody say that already we are in losses, we don't have any taxable income, so can a lesser tax reduction, or can we go for any lower tax reduction certificate, so that this 5% is very heavy, or 2% is very heavy for us, and there is no need at all because there is no income for us at all. So in such cases, they said that there is no system of giving a lower TDS certificate for these kind of tax deduction at source on cash withdrawals. Of course, there may be some exemptions that may be prescribed, but per se, there is no system of issuing lower TDS certificates in these kind of deductions.
Yeah, of course, there may be certain persons who will be withdrawing money from the bank, like the government may be withdrawing money from the bank, or a banking company, or a cooperative society engaged in the business of banking, a post office, or a banking correspondence, or ATM operators. So for these people, though they may deal or though they may withdraw cash, or though they may handle the cash in substantial amounts, for these people, this 194N section will not be applicable.
Yes, sir.
Now, actually, non-filing of returns is a deterrent. This 194N acts like a deterrent to those SSEs who are not filing return of income. And also one may wonder as to how a banker will know, or a post office come to know about the filing or non-filing of returns by the person who is withdrawing, or by his account holder. Let us say State Bank of India has X Limited as an account holder, and the X Limited is withdrawing cash. Now, State Bank of India should be in a position to know as to at what rate it has to deduct. To know the rate at which and the threshold at which the deduction is to be made, they have to know whether X Limited has filed the return of income for the last 3 years or not. Now, for this purpose, what has been done is a facility has been enabled in the e-filing site. Now, let us go to that facility and check as to how this can be accomplished. Now, let us go into the Income Tax India efiling.gov.in site. In that, on the left menus, we have something called as verification of applicability of 194N. So, a bank or a post office or a cooperative society, if they were required to deduct 194N TDS, to know the threshold and to know the rate at which the TDS is to be deducted, they have to utilize this utility, and they have to give the PAN number. Let us say in our example, it is X Limited. They have to give the PAN number of the X Limited here, and also they have to give the mobile number. Now, this utility should not be misutilized. Therefore, a declaration is to be made that the above information is utilized only for the purpose of TDS, and that too this utility is being utilized on behalf of a banking company, cooperative society, or a post office. And if it is misused, and the person utilizing this utility should also be ready for the consequences, right?
Okay.
And one may wonder, is it possible for a bank like a State Bank of India or ICICI Bank, or for that matter any bank or cooperative society dealing with a large number of account holders, to individually check upon each and every PAN number? Now, for that, a facility may also be given, or the facility will be given. Maybe they may integrate this utility into their CBS environment itself, and the verification on a bulk basis or an automatic basis can also be done.
Correct.
That is the thing, and we shall move forward.
It is very much clearly evident that the government is making all its moves for making a cashless economy.
Yes, cashless economy, and the avoiding of tax shall also be very, very difficult. Now,
Correct.
let us say, even though some may be withdrawing the cash from the banks, but still, if they are not filing their return of income and offering their income to tax, what will happen is on the gross amount of the turnover that have been achieved by them, they will land up paying 5% of tax.
Correct.
It is
Correct.
not that on a 1 crore of rupee, if they earn 1% profit, on that 1%, 30% tax paid. It is not the case here. They will be landing up or ending up paying 5% of tax on the gross amount withdrawn from the bank itself, which will be at a very high rate of incidence, tax incidence, and it is a deterrent, so that the SSCs will be encouraged to file returns.
I think even people who are also filing the returns, I think they may also start avoiding these kind of transactions.
Yes, that's great.
Because 2% on the gross withdrawal is definitely a sizable amount.
Yeah. For even those SSCs who are furnishing their return of income regularly, 2% is a very high amount, and the cash transaction will be discouraged.
Yes, sir.
Now, moving forward, there was a press release on 8th July 2020, and it states that an MOU has been entered into between CBDT and SEBI, and through this MOU, both these organizations, SEBI and CBDT, will be exchanging information on a seamless basis. You take it forward, sir.
Yes, no, it is very much required, because there are cases where on so many companies, several proceedings of the SEBI are happening. The outcome is not known to the department unless they come forward or they make a move. These kind of data sharing between these two, either between SEBI and CBDT, will help in properly addressing the issues. Definitely, it's a good move, sir.
Yes, sir. And also, what they are saying is they will be sharing the information either on request. Let us say SEBI may request CBDT in respect of any investigation, or if there is any investigation with the CBDT may, on a suo motu basis also, it may inform to SEBI.
Correct. Just like sales tax department, people are now passing on the information that there are certain bogus purchases that are found. So you just take care of it. Like that, now what is happening is all the government departments are sharing these kind of information and trying to put a full stop for malpractices, at least.
And not only that, they will be setting up a data exchange steering group. It will be constituted, and that steering group will be meeting periodically, and they will review the status of data exchange, and also if the system is not that much effective, they will implement some mechanism wherein the system of data sharing becomes more effective.
Right, sir.
So all the SSCs must take a cognizance of this fact, and they should ensure that they not only comply with the laws and regulations of a particular act, but also they should also be careful, and they should be complying all the laws and regulations which are applicable to them.
Right, sir. Correct.
Next. Sir, the next thing is with regard to the updation of utilities. We already know that ITR 1, ITR 2 and ITR 4 for assessment year 2021 have been enabled. And now, though they are enabled some time back, now what they have done is on 7th of July and 8th of July, these utilities have been updated now to take care of the interest under section 234 A, B and C. Right. Actually, what has happened is there was a notification 35 of 2020, right, wherein some relaxations, furthermore relaxations have been given in respect of the due dates of filing of certain returns. Now, I think you can take this forward.
Right, sir. Now, instead of waiting till 30th November, you can start filing, because the utility is very much available. Generally, what happens now, we always file complaints against the department that the utility is not enabled, the forms are not notified. I think at least now the department is very much ready. The forms are notified, the utilities are also very much enabled. So wherever possible, if at all, if we get a chance to file, instead of waiting till the last minute, I think we can start doing it.
Yeah, of course, under this COVID situation, everybody has to take care of or follow the guidelines issued by the government from time to time.
Right.
And by following those guidelines, if possible, it is better and advisable to go on with your regular and routine works. So if you can take through this notification number 35 with regard to the relaxations, can you walk through?
Yes, sir, definitely. Right. The due date for filing the income tax returns for assessment year 1920, the original due date is 31st March 2020. It is extended till 30th June, and afterwards it is made 31st July. Now, another important point here is, say if somebody wants to make investment under 80C, 80D, or they want to make some contribution for trust to get 80J exemption, definitely they can make it. They can make it before 31st July, and they can file their returns of income. And there will not be any penalty if you file it before 31st July. However, this 234F, yes, definitely that can be levied. That is applicable. Next, with
Yes,
respect,
sir. Because
tell me.
for assessment year 1920, someone who had filed the return of income in February 2020 before the onset of this COVID, he might have suffered this 234F.
Correct.
Now there will not be any level playing field, because now a person who has filed now and who will not be meeting this 234F, I think it is not proper. Of course, the interest has been given as a waiver. Of course, interest will also be levied.
Correct.
The only thing is you will be allowed to file the return of income. Penalty will not be levied, but you have to meet 234 ABC as well as 234F.
Yes, sir. At least it's an opportunity given. Instead of fighting against the department, let us use it and close it.
Yeah, boon in disguise. Yeah, please continue, sir.
Right, sir. For assessment year 2021, the original due date is 31st July or 31st October cases and other cases. Now that is extended till 30th November 2020. Here one point is, what about 234A interest? Because 234A interest is applicable the date from the due date for filing of return of income. There they said that what they have said is that if the self-assessment tax is less than 1 lakh, there is no need to pay 234A interest if you file your return of income before 30th November. But if the self-assessment tax is more than 1 lakh, so whatever is the due date that is originally prescribed under the Act, say for individuals, in case of tax audit cases, it is 31st October. So whatever is the due date prescribed for it, the 234A interest will be calculated from that date if self-assessment tax is above that, if is above 1 lakh rupees. Next, 234B and C is automatically applicable in all cases.
Okay, sir. Now, moving forward with regard to the tax audit cases.
Right. The original due date for filing it is 31st October 2020. It is actually extended till 30th November 2020. But here one point we should keep into mind is, anyway, the due date for filing return of income is 30th November. But you have to file the audit report 1 month prior. The due date prescribed is 30th October. So anyway, we should keep all our accounts ready and get the books of accounts audited by 31st October 2020. So that facilitates completion of tax audit process, and it also facilitates filing of return of income before 30th November.
Yes, sir. For assessment year 2021, the audit report has to be furnished prior to 30th or on or before 30th September 2020. That is as per the law. But the relaxation is given that a 1 month relaxation is given, and the audit report can be furnished by 31st October 2020. But
Correct.
as in the original law, the tax audit case return of income can be filed by 31st October. But
Correct.
now for filing the return, there is a relaxation of 1 month, and the tax audit case return of income can be filed on or before 30th November 2020.
Correct.
And coming to the chapter 6A deductions, so within what time the investment can be made, investment or expenditure for that matter? Actually, it has to be made within the end of the previous year. But
Correct.
now due to COVID situation, previously it was extended, relaxed up till 30th June 2020, but it is furthermore extended by 31st July 2020.
Correct. Correct. Whoever want to make investments in ATC, ETD, or whoever want to give some donations which qualify under ATG, they can still make it till 31st July, and they can very much claim it in their income tax returns.
For financial year 1920, that is for assessment year 2021, you can make the investment or expenditure until 31/7/2020, but claim for the assessment year 2021 itself. However, where you have made any investment or expenditure from 1/4/2020 to 31/7/2020, what you need to do is you need to fill a separate schedule in the return of income. That should be taken care of.
Correct. There is a bifurcation for investments up to 31st July and afterwards. That care we should take it.
Yeah. Now, can you throw some light on this investment with respect to this capital gains, that exemption claim from section 54 to 54 GB?
Right. Say the people whoever have got some capital gains in the earlier years, and they need to make investment in the financial year 1920. Say they need to make a purchase. They need to purchase within 2 years from the end of the date of transfer, or within 3 years. In all those cases, if it is going to fall in the financial year 1920, that the date is extended till 30th September 2020.
Okay,
so it
sir.
is.
Then what about let us say some in the financial year 18-19, somebody has transferred a residential property, and for that person he will be having 2 years time, or let us say if not in 18-19, maybe in year 17-18. 17-18, some transfer has taken place of a residential house, and for him section 54 is applicable. He can make the purchase within 2 years, 2 years time limit. Now, for them, is there any extension?
Correct, because no, actually they have financial year 1920, but because of this COVID situation or whatever it may be, they have made an extension for this. And if somebody makes it before 30th September, either they purchase the house, or if the construction is required to be completed in the financial year 1920, they can still make it till 30th September, and they can very much claim it.
Okay, sir. Now, there are also some relaxations with respect to the filing of TDS or TCS returns. Previously, the original due date contemplated under the Act and Rules is 31st of May, but it was extended to 31st of July 2020. Previous to this one, to this notification, the relaxation was only up to 30th June, but it is further extended by 1 month to 31st July. And also, the time limit within which the TDS certificate is to be issued is again extended by 15 days. So from the from the due date of furnishing the return. So the 31st July being the due date for furnishing the return, the TDS certificate, the issuance time you will have some 15 days from that date, and obviously it will be 15th of August 2020, before which you have to issue your TDS certificates. Right. Now, moving forward, the concession in the rate of interest in respect of TDS, TCS, advance tax, and self-assessment tax, you will be charged only 9% for delay in payment up to 30th June 2020. But after 2020, you will land up paying 12% in respect of self-assessment tax and 18% in respect of TDS and TCS. Right. And also, can you take me through the other 2 points, sir?
Right. Whatever are the proceedings that are there under direct taxes and Binami law, the earlier the due date is 31st December. Even all our assessments used to be completed before 31st December. Now that is extended till the assessments also are once again dragged, and they can be completed before 31st March. The last one, this Aadhaar PAN linking, I think it is getting extended irrespective of COVID. So that is continuing this time also. That due date is also extended. Earlier it is 30th June 2020. That is made 31st March 2021.
Sir, actually there are some practical difficulties with respect to updation of these Aadhaar cards.
Correct.
And many people, let us say some aged people, let us say if they are having, they are of 50 years of age or 60 years of age. Well, in the olden days, the date of birth was not recorded properly. And
Okay.
also at the time of obtaining PAN, or at the time of obtaining the registering or enrolling for Aadhaar, some people did not take care about the correct data being given to the authorities.
Correct.
So there is a mismatch of data, and now getting the data corrected with any of the department is becoming a Herculean task, and Aadhaar updation people are facing some difficulties, and in this COVID situation,
Correct.
they are facing much difficulty in updating the Aadhaar data. Of course, this is a welcome move wherein the linking has been extended until 31st March 2021. Now, whether this will be the last due date or not, only time has to decide.
Correct.
Now, next about Vivad Se Vishwas. Can you go through that, sir?
Sir, it is also following in line with all other extensions. Earlier, the due date prescribed for making declarations and all these things is 30th June 2020. Now that is made extended, that is extended till 31st December 2020. So, filing of the declarations and getting their order, all these things have to be completed before 31st December 2020. Here also there are certain practical difficulties we need to discuss about, because filing of declaration and getting order, if both the things happen on the same date, that is 31st December, I don't know how somebody can get the order before that. Say if somebody makes a declaration, and I think it is very much difficult to get the order on the same date, because they need to do some verification process also.
So the only thing what we have to advise to the SSC is that don't wait until 31st December to file the application form. You file the application form well in advance, and give
Correct.
some time to the department to pass an order, and also you need to pay the tax also.
Correct.
So it is not advisable to apply until and wait until 31st December, but a month or 2 months before, prior to that due date, the formalities of application and getting the order, if it can be done, and the payment may also be made by 31st, well in advance prior to 31st December. It will be, because this Vivad Se Vishwas scheme is a very beneficial scheme, wherein the FP need not pay the interest as well as the penalty. Only the tax demanded he has to pay. So this is a very beneficial scheme, and the benefits of this scheme should be grabbed prior to the due date. That's what my view is.
Correct. Because of these extensions, no, already the clients or the tax consultants must have appraised the status of the appeal, whether it is a maintainable one, or is it something which we need to go under Vivad Se Vishwas. By this time, that appraisal should have been made by the tax consultants. So I think it's not working on it, provided this COVID permits us.
Yeah. Next one, what about this new registration scheme for trusts?
Trusts, actually, they first, all the existing trusts which are having 12A and 80G, they need to once again go for re-registration. Number two, whoever is making the application, first they will be given provisional registration, and afterwards they will be given some final registration. All these procedures are prescribed, which are applicable from 1st June 2020. Now that from 1st June 2020, that is also extended from 1st October 2020. So applying for re-registration by the existing trusts, or if at all, if a new trust is formed, if they want to come under this, if they want to make an application under 12A, all these people have to apply or go with the new procedure from 1st October 2020. Till then, the old procedure will continue.
Okay, sir. Next, moving forward, we have an order under section 119 dated 10th July 2020.
Right. Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, that can't be made by me because you are in the studio.
Right.
The only thing what you can do is you may have another laptop or something like that wherein you can view the telecast. But
Right.
kindly bear with me for this edition of update. From the next edition, we will plan for it.
Right. No problem, sir.
So this order under 119 dated 10th July, it deals with the processing of returns with a refund claim under section 143 subsection 1 of the Income Tax Act. Correct. Beyond the prescribed time limit in non-scrutiny cases. The subject itself contains conditions. You please go through that, sir.
Correct, sir. Correct, sir. Because what they are saying is that they are going to process the cases where there are refund claims. Number one. Number two, there should not be fault on the part of the SSC. But this 143(1) could not be processed because of certain technical glitches. So the CBDT earlier also has done this kind of exercise. Now once again they have come out with this kind of exercise so that the returns which could not be processed because of technical glitches where there is no fault of the SSC. Because as per 143(1), no, any return has to be processed and a communication has to be sent within 1 year from the end of the financial year in which the return is filed. So afterwards 143(1) cannot be processed. So because of this kind of orders, all these pending returns which could not be processed either because of limitation of time or because of these technical glitches, once again they will be processed by the department, and wherever refund needs to be issued, they will be issuing a refund. So definitely it is a welcome move, sir. It is of a great help for the people for whom the refunds are pending because of non-processing of returns.
Yeah, of course, but this comes with the riders. Prior administrative approval of a principal CCIT or CCIT is necessary, and the intimation under 143(1) can be sent in such cases by 31st October 2020. Correct. And also, this relaxation will not be applicable to those returns which are selected for scrutiny or returns which remains unprocessed, because where either demand is shown as payable or is likely to arise afterwards. So this will be applicable only in refund cases.
Correct, sir. Correct, because they want to process the returns, they want to issue the refunds because there is no fault on the part of the SSC. Because of some technical or because of some certain statutory time limits or something, they could not be processed. Now they are settled.
Yeah, please go on. Please go on.
So now the CBDT has come forward. So people who are pending with refunds because of these kind of issues, now they will be getting it.
Yeah, and also the return which was unprocessed because of any reason attributable to the SSC will also not be done. So as you said, only those returns which remained unprocessed because of some technical glitches at the CPC and will be processed, and that too the SSC will not be deprived of the demand. And if a demand is going to be raised after processing, that will not be processed. So it is a beneficial. It is a beneficial thing to the SSC.
Correct, sir. Correct. CBDT has come forward. All these kind of things, I think, particularly taking this COVID or something into consideration. Of course, even before also, they have taken this kind of move earlier also to process these kind of returns which could not be processed like this. Earlier also, there is, if I remember correctly, there is some order of CBDT earlier also which has taken care of these kind of issues.
Good. That's great. That's great. And moving forward, there was what you call one. Is it a notification? Is it a? This is a circular. This is a circular. and circular number 3 of 2020. This
Correct.
is as recent as yesterday.
Correct.
Now,
13th July 2020.
yes, what they are saying is, where an SSC furnished his return of income, he did not verify that return, be it through OTP or a bank account or DMAT, blah blah blah, something like that. For the last 5 years, from assessment year 15-16 to assessment year 19-20, what they have done is, now you can do that.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, please throw some light on this, sir.
Right, sir. Actually, what is happening, no, in some cases, where after filing the return of income, maybe the client may not be available, or wherever this OTP is linked, somehow we could not process it, where we could not do it, or we could not take it forward. Somehow the return could not be verified, or the copy is not signed by the SSC and that is not sent to Bangalore for further processing by the CBDT, by the CPC. In all such cases, what is happening, if this after the expiry of 120 days, of course, there are some cases where even some extension is also given earlier, where people could not verify the returns and could not send the declarations. Some period they have made it as 180 days, something like that they have made earlier. Now, what is happening to those kind of returns here? First of all, they are becoming invalid because the return is not verified. Number two, if at all if there is any refund or something, since it is not verified, it will not be processed by the CPC. So they are just lying like that. So to address these kind of issues, the CBDT has come forward and it has given a very big relaxation, wherein from the assessment year 15-16 to 19-20, all these pending verifications, pending cases where declarations could not be sent or where verification is not made, they can simply make it and they can what to call regularize whatever are IT returns that are pending, which are treated as invalid, they will be now become valid. So they can come out of all the consequences where whatever consequences are applicable for non-filing of returns, they can come out of all these consequences. Number one, they can regularize all their return filing scheme. Number three, wherever refund is applicable, they can happily get it. But such verification should be completed before 30th September 2020.
Yeah, we also have a rider for this, and this relaxation will not be applicable where the income tax department during the intervening period has already taken some recourse for ensuring filing of tax return by the taxpayer. That means maybe a notice under 142 subsection 1 or a notice under section 148, something like that.
Correct. Because in such cases, when a notice is given, in response to that notice, anyway you will be filing some other return of income. You will be declaring your income, and the department must have started acting on it. So processing this return is of no use at this point of time, because there is already some other proceeding that is happening, which is going to take care and which is going to take care to assess your income and all these things. So in those cases where the department has initiated certain proceedings, then in those cases there is no need to go with this kind of verification process.
And also it has been mentioned that the verification can be done through either sending this ITRV to the CPC Bangalore, or you can do it by EVC or this Aadhaar OTP. Anything you can do. So all the previous, all the current and existing verification modes will be available to those 5 years returns also.
Correct. One good point here, sir. You are actually, whoever are the SSCs, whoever could not make it, they have to make it before 30th September. And even the department has also come forward. If you see point number 5, what they are saying is that they will be processing all such returns before 31st December 2020. And they will be sending all the information also.
That's great. And also, if anybody refund is due for anyone, the refund will also be helpful in these days. In these COVID days, that refunds will be very much of useful to the SSCs. Now,
if you have any record of all these cases, I think wherever possible, tax consultants and chat accounts can start doing it.
Yes. Of course, not only the SSCs, but also the tax consultants have some duties and responsibilities with regard to all these relaxations. Of course, we are partners in nation building, and
Correct.
definitely we will do whatever or implement whatever the government say. And next,
Correct.
moving forward, case laws, and also, sir, I am afraid that we are left with a very small little bit of time. What I want to do is we will breeze through these case losses in a very quick time.
Yes,
Is it
sir.
okay for you?
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Now, the first significant case law which we thought we should be sharing with you is a Supreme Court special leave petition filed in Supreme Court in the case of ACIT versus Marico Limited, which deals with a 148 notice. Sir,
Correct.
you take up this issue, sir.
Correct, sir. Actually, earlier this issue is raised by the assessing officer, and the relevant submissions are made by the SSC, and afterwards the assessment is completed and no addition has been made in this respect. So it implies that the SSC is satisfied with the submissions made by the SSC. So after having got satisfied, once again, based on the same issue or based on the same reason for which 148 is initiated, they want to once again reopen the case, and they want to once again dig the issue which is already covered in the earlier assessment. Now, I think the Supreme Court said that it amounts to a mere change of opinion, and 148 cannot be used as a tool for revisiting the cases which are already completed, for which the adequate information has been supplied by the SSC. But here, one
Okay.
small point to be taken care is whenever assessments are happening, better we disclose all the information, we give the true and fair particulars, we try to substantiate our claims properly, because tomorrow it is going to help you and it is going to test, it is going to stand the test of law. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Right. Next, one is with regard to Guru Nanak Industries versus Amar Singh, represented by their legal representatives, and this is also with before the Honorable Supreme Court.
Correct, sir. Is this one is actually it is also a latest decision which is pronounced in the month of May 2020. Though it is not related to income tax and it is related to partnership, I just want to bring to the attention of our members para 12 of this order. What it says is that the Supreme Court has clearly made a distinction between retirement of partner and dissolution of partner. What happens in the case of a retirement of partner is the firm will be reconstituted, and whoever are the partners, they will be continuing it. But in the case of dissolution of partnership firm, it is very much different from the retirement. So, if at all this judgment is very much applicable and very much in the need for the people where there are only two partners. Say if two partners are there, and if they have become old, or if one partner has become old, or if two partners are there, if by misfortune somebody passes away, what is going to happen is the firm is said to be dissolved. It is not that a case where just you please wait, we are going to bring a new partner, because on the day of the death, the firm is no more. It has become dissolved. So, if at all, if there are any capital assets, then the valuation of according to fair market value, which is prescribed under 45 subsection 4, is going to come into picture, and all these consequences are going to come into picture. If at all, if the firm is going to dissolve, particularly in cases where there are two partners. So I think people can just think of having three partners, so that these kind of issues can be addressed properly.
Yeah, if three partners is not auspicious to someone else, they may go for four partners.
Correct, sir. Correct. Because what is happening now? Generally, wife and husband, or son and father, only two partners will be there. What will happen now if we'll be purchasing the firm will be purchasing certain assets some 20 years back or 25 years back, say for 1 lakh or something at a very less cost. Now the market value or the fair market value becomes 1 crore or 2 crores. But if the firm gets dissolved because of these kind of issues where there is only one partner, because if there is one partner, you cannot say that you cannot call it as a firm. You can call it only when there are two or more partners. So on the date of death, the firm is no more. So to avoid the consequences of Article 4, I think just we can think of having more than 2 partners. That's a piece of suggestion which everybody can evaluate.
Right. Moving forward, this Bombay High Court judgment in Sesagova Limited versus JCIT, with regard to the allowability of education cess and higher and secondary education cess in computing the income from business or profession. Now the thing is, can this 40A, is it applicable in respect of education and higher education cess, is a question that has been decided by the Bombay High Court. You please take it forward, sir.
Sir, it's a very welcoming judgment, and it is definitely of great use for the people whoever pay education cess on on a higher amount. If we take this judgment, no, they have paid education cess in crores of rupees. What they have done is they have not made any claim in their original return of income. What they have done is during the assessment proceedings, they have made a claim that education cess can be allowed as a business expenditure because it is not hit under 40A subsection 2, 40 subsection A subsection 2. The analogy what they have made before the court is that if 40A subsection 2 is taken, it is taking care of taxes, and the word cess is not included in the 40A subsection 2 section. What if you take the bill, no, earlier when it is proposed before the parliament, the word cess is also there in section 40A2. And afterwards, when it is made act, they have removed the cess. So it itself establishes the intention of the legislature that they don't want to include cess, and they don't want to disallow cess A subsection 2. And another thing is this High Court, before the High Court, they have discussed about sometimes CBDT circulars, and there is another judgment of Rajasthan High Court in the case of Chambal fertilizers or something, wherein they also said that the education cess, whatever is paid on whatever is incurred, that can be claimed as business expenditure, and that is not hit by the provisions of 40A2, sir. It is very much it is a very interesting judgment, and we can definitely think of this.
Yes, and moving forward, this another Bombay High Court judgment with regard to CIT principal CIT versus Shapurji Pallanji, and it is given in 117 taxman.com 625. You please take us through this, sir.
Correct, sir. Actually, the SSC Shapurji and company, they changes. I think two sellers. Two sellers out. Of course, they have made from so many people. They have made purchases, and two sellers. Before the sales tax department, they said that we have not made any sales to Shapurji and company, and they said that we have not made any sales, and I think based on that, that information is passed by the sales tax department to the income tax department. During the course of proceedings before the income tax department, the SSC had submitted bills and whatever are the entries made and whatever are the required details to substantiate the purchase. I think all these are made before the assessing officer. But still, the assessing officer made an addition under 69C stating that these are bogus purchases because whatever is the information that is, whatever the department has got from the sales tax department, I think they have taken as a guiding factor, ignoring all the other evidences that are submitted by the SSC. So the Bombay High Court, what it has pronounced is that what it has held that the department, apart, just you may get some information from the sales tax department, but the income tax department should make its own inquiries, its own independent inquiries, and even the SSC also, because you are relying on the statements that are given by 2 or 3 sellers. So you should give an opportunity to the SSC also to controvert or to rebut or to explain whatever is to state himself about the contents of the statements that are given by the sellers. So both the things have not happened because the department has not made any independent inquiry to say that these purchases are bogus, nor they have given any opportunity for the SSC to contradict the statement given by the seller. So based on these things, Bombay High Court said that the purchase cannot be held to be bogus, and they have directed for the deletion of edition made under section 69C, sir.
Yeah, that would have been a great relief to these SSC. And with regard to this, another decision of Bombay High Court in SR Shipping Limited versus CIT.
Correct, sir. Here they got a loan. They got a loan, and since these people are unable to pay it, the loan is written off. What has happened? No, the SING has tried to make an addition saying that it is definitely related to your business. So this has erosion out of the business only. So it should be treated as a revenue receipt, and it should be and an addition has been made in this respect. The tribunal also felt that anyway the loan whatever is written off is to be treated as a revenue receipt, and it is held that whatever addition is made, it has subscribed to the view of it has accepted the view of the SING officer. But here when it has come before the Bombay High Court, what they said is that even they have said that whatever loan that is written off, they said that it is more like an operational subsidy, which is very much related to the business. So it should be equated with the subsidy. For that, Bombay High Court said that both it cannot be treated as subsidy because if you take a loan, definitely there is an obligation to pay interest, and definitely there is an obligation to pay principal also. But if you take the subsidy, I think there is no need to make any repayment because it is more like a grant, and definitely there are certain conditions that is attached, and based on the nature of subsidy, whether it is revenue or whether it is capital, it depends upon the nature of grant that is given by the other fellow, by the government or whatever it may be. But that subsidy cannot be equated with the loan because here there is an obligation to repay. So they said that such it cannot be the waiver of loan or writing of the loan cannot be treated as a revenue receipt, and whatever addition that is made in this respect, it is held to be deleted.
Right. Now, with regard to one-time loan waive-off, in the case of ITO versus Sri Vasavi Polymers Private Limited, and this is a Visakhapatnam tribunal case. Please go through that, sir.
Sir, actually, they have gone with one-time settlement with the banker. I think there are two limits. One is one loan is there. The other one cash credit is also there. I think because of one-time settlement, they have made a payment at a lesser value than the loan whatever they have taken, whatever they need to, they are supposed to pay. The department want to tax it under 41 subsection 1. Here the tribunal it has taken into consideration various judgments of Supreme Court and other courts, and what they have said is that the loan whatever is borrowed is never claimed as an expenditure in the profit and loss account. It is never claimed as a deductible expenditure. So when it is not claimed as a deductible expenditure, 41(1) will not come into picture because of cessation of this liability. 41(1) is not going to come into picture, and they said that since it is not claimed as a deduction in the earlier years, it has no application, and whatever is the waiver that is made, whatever benefit that is the SSC has got could not be taxed under 41(1), sir.
Okay, fine. And what about this Jaipur tribunal case in ACIT versus? Can you spell that, sir?
Right.
Jairaj. Is it
Jairaj?
Okay. Okay.
Right,
Jairaj.
Correct, sir. It is something which is very practically we'll be seeing it. Here, no, they have entered into sale deeds. A registration has happened. But what has happened? No, the buyer has actually not discharged the consideration. They have given some post-dated checks and they are not honored. And afterwards, the SSC, what has happened? No, the SSC originally had filed his return of income showing the capital gains. And afterwards, when these checks are not honored and when certain incidents have happened afterwards, he has once again revised the return of income and whatever capital gains he has offered, he has decided not to offer the capital gains because he has not earned anything out of it. So he has filed one revised return of income. During the assessment proceedings also, they have brought to the notice of the department that already they have filed before the Rajasthan High Court that the sale deed should be cancelled, and Rajasthan High Court had already passed one injunction order with respect to the sale deeds and with respect to the position also. Number two, they have brought to the notice of the department also that in the sale deed itself, they have mentioned a clause that this sale deed is always subject to honoring of the payments. So they have relied that when the payments are not honored, where is the question of this sale deed to be operative or to be in existence? So when the sale deed itself is not there, where is the question of offering of the capital gains? And another thing is they have brought to the notice of the department that already they have filed a complaint against the buyers for non-honoring of these checks under Negotiable Instruments Act. So, and even with respect to the position also, they got one order that the position also cannot be granted. So, based on all these things, taking all these things into the consideration, the tribunal held that there is no transfer at all in this case. And the buyer is also not ready to make any transfer, and no position is also not ready to give any position. And when the sale deed itself mentions that, is mentioning that this sale deed is always subject to honoring of the checks, and when no payment is received, just because a sale deed is executed, you cannot tax the SSC under the head capital gains. Here, one point is the concept of real income theory is very much appreciated in this decision, sir.
Yes, that's great. That's great. And thank you. And I think we came to the end of this edition of income tax update. I thank my co-panelist CA PV Raghavendra Kumar for joining me in this edition of this update. Thank you very much, sir. And we shall meet in the next update. Do you want to say something, sir? Please go on.